My beloved child, don't skip. Listen carefully, because this fictional story begins with a truth that has remained hidden for far too long. Stay till the end because something huge is waiting for you. For what felt like forever, you believed the chapter with your ex had already closed. You convinced yourself that there was nothing left to understand and no reason to look back. But in this fictional story, an unexpected moment changes everything. A woman connected to your ex can no longer carry the burden of silence. She has replayed the past in her mind countless times, wondering whether speaking up would help or only reopen old wounds. Finally, she realizes that honesty is sometimes the only path toward peace. What happened next changed everything. She reaches out with hesitation, not to create conflict or blame anyone, but because the truth has become heavier than silence. Her voice trembles as she begins explaining that what happened between you and your ex was far more complicated than it appeared from the outside. Misunderstandings grew where honest conversations should have happened. Assumptions replaced communication, and before either person realized it, distance had become greater than either of them intended. Looking back now, she wishes someone had spoken sooner before confusion became impossible to untangle. Listen carefully. This changes everything. As she continues sharing her perspective, she admits that she watched both of you struggle with emotions that were never fully expressed. She remembers moments when pride prevented important conversations, when fear kept feelings hidden, and when silence slowly became louder than words. She quietly says, "Sometimes people don't stop caring. They simply stop knowing how to reach each other." Those words remain in your heart because they offer a new way of understanding a chapter that once seemed impossible to explain. Stay till the end because something huge is waiting for you. The more you listen, the more you realize that healing doesn't always begin with changing the past. Sometimes it begins with finally understanding it. And just when you think you've heard everything, she prepares to reveal one final conversation. One that could completely change the way this fictional story ends. What happened next changed everything. My beloved child, don't skip this part. Listen carefully, because this fictional story is about to reveal the conversation that remained hidden until now. Stay till the end because something huge is waiting for you. After taking a long breath, the woman looked down for a moment before continuing. It wasn't easy for her to revisit those memories, but she knew that keeping them buried any longer would only allow more misunderstandings to grow. She quietly admitted that there were many moments when your ex spoke about you differently than anyone expected. While others assumed the story was over, your name continued to appear in conversations that no one else ever heard. What happened next changed everything. She explained that there were evenings when your ex would suddenly become silent after hearing something that reminded them of the past. A familiar song, an old photograph, or a place filled with memories would leave them lost in thought. They rarely shared those feelings openly, but it became clear that moving on wasn't as simple as everyone believed. According to her, there were emotions that remained unresolved. Not because anyone wanted to hold on to the past, but because some conversations had never truly taken place. Listen carefully. This changes everything. The woman then shared something that surprised even her. She said there were times when people misunderstood your intentions, and instead of correcting those misunderstandings immediately, everyone assumed someone else would. That silence allowed false assumptions to spread until they felt like facts. Looking back, she wished she had encouraged more honest conversations instead of believing everything would work itself out on its own. As the conversation continued, she softly said, "I realized that neither of you was the person others imagined. Both of you were carrying hurt, both of you were protecting your hearts, and both of you were waiting for answers that never came. Those words didn't erase the past, but they helped you see it through a different perspective. You began realizing that people often act out of fear, confusion, or misunderstanding rather than bad intentions. Stay till the end because something huge is waiting for you." Just as the conversation seemed to be ending, the woman remembered one final moment that she had never shared with anyone before. She hesitated before speaking because she knew those few sentences could completely change the way this fictional story would be understood. She looked directly at you and quietly said, "There's one thing your ex said that I never forgot. My beloved child." That single sentence becomes the beginning of the biggest revelation yet. But what your ex actually said, and why those words remained unforgettable, will be revealed in the next chapter. And when you finally hear that conversation, what happened next changes everything. My beloved child, don't skip this part. Listen carefully, because this fictional story is about to reveal the words that remained unspoken for far too long. Stay till the end because something huge is waiting for you. The woman paused before continuing. For several moments, the room was completely silent. She knew that once these words were spoken, the past would never be seen in quite the same way again. Looking into your eyes, she finally whispered, "Your ex once told me, I don't hate them. I just wish we had understood each other before everything fell apart." Hearing those words caught you completely by surprise. What happened next changed everything. She explained that your ex never spoke with anger whenever your name came up. Instead, there was a quiet sadness that was difficult to ignore. There were moments when they smiled while remembering the good times, followed by long periods of silence as they reflected on everything that had gone wrong. According to her, it wasn't resentment that stayed with them, it was regret over conversations that never happened and feelings that were never honestly expressed. Listen carefully. This changes everything. The woman admitted that she had misunderstood the situation herself. At first, she believed the relationship had ended because neither of you cared anymore. But as time passed, she realized something different. She saw two people who had allowed fear, assumptions, and poor communication to speak louder than their true feelings. That realization stayed with her for a long time, and it became the reason she finally decided to share what she knew. She then shared one final memory that had never left her mind. One evening, someone asked your ex if they had completely moved on. After a long pause, they quietly replied, "Moving on doesn't always mean forgetting. Sometimes it means accepting what happened while still wishing things had ended with more understanding." Those words weren't a promise of reconciliation or a prediction about the future. They were simply an honest reflection on how complicated human emotions can be. Stay till the end because something huge is waiting for you. As you listened, you realized that this fictional story wasn't really about discovering someone else's secrets. It was about discovering the value of truth, accountability, and honest communication. For the first time, you stopped searching for someone to blame and started appreciating the clarity that comes from seeing the past with greater wisdom. The weight of unanswered questions slowly began to lift. My beloved child, there is still one chapter left. The woman has one final piece of advice. Words that will help you leave the past where it belongs and step into a future filled with peace instead of regret. And when she shares that final message, this fictional story will reach its most beautiful ending. My beloved child, don't skip this part. Listen carefully, because this fictional story is now approaching its most emotional turning point. Stay till the end because something huge is waiting for you. After sharing everything she had carried for so long, the woman became quiet. It was as if a burden had finally been lifted from her heart. She looked at you with sincerity and said, "I didn't come here to make you look back. I came because I believed you deserved clarity instead of confusion." Those words stayed with you. For the first time, you realized that sometimes the greatest gift isn't getting the ending we wanted, it's finally understanding the story we lived. What happened next changed everything. She continued by explaining that your ex had changed over time. Life had taught lessons that couldn't be learned while emotions were still running high. Looking back, they had begun to recognize mistakes they once couldn't see. They understood that pride had created distance, assumptions had replaced honest conversations, and silence had spoken louder than truth. Those realizations didn't erase the past, but they helped them grow into a different person than they had once been. Listen carefully. This changes everything. The woman smiled gently before saying, "One thing I learned from watching both of you is that people often protect their hearts so carefully that they accidentally hide the very feelings they wish someone would understand." Those words echoed in your mind. You began realizing how often fear disguises itself as indifference and how many meaningful relationships are changed not by a lack of care, but by a lack of communication. As the conversation drew to a close, she handed you a small folded note. It wasn't written by your ex, nor did it contain dramatic secrets. Instead, it held a simple reminder she had written herself after witnessing everything unfold: never let pride have the final word when honesty still has a chance. You read the sentence several times. It seemed so simple, yet it carried a lesson that could change not only how you viewed the past but also how you approached every relationship in the future. Stay till the end because something huge is waiting for you. Walking away from that conversation, you felt something you hadn't experienced in a long time, not certainty about what might happen next, but peace with what had already happened. You realized that closure isn't always about getting every answer. Sometimes it's about gaining enough understanding to stop letting unanswered questions control your life. My beloved child, this fictional story reminds us that every relationship teaches us something valuable. Some teach us how to love. Others teach us how to communicate. Others teach us the importance of honesty, humility, and forgiveness. Even painful chapters can become meaningful when we allow them to shape us into wiser, kinder people. But one final chapter still remains. In that final chapter, you'll discover how this fictional story ends. Not with regret, but with healing, gratitude, and the courage to embrace a future that is no longer held back by the past. And when that final chapter unfolds, what happened next changes everything. My beloved child, don't skip this part. Listen carefully, because this fictional story is now reaching the moment where everything finally begins to make sense. Stay till the end because something beautiful is waiting for you. As you walked away from that conversation, you noticed something had quietly changed within you. The questions that had echoed in your mind for so long were no longer demanding answers. Instead, they were slowly being replaced by understanding. For the first time, you weren't carrying the weight of "what if?" You were carrying the peace that comes from finally seeing the bigger picture. What happened next changed everything. Over the next few days, you found yourself reflecting on every chapter of the relationship. Instead of remembering only the pain, you also remembered the laughter, the lessons, and the moments that helped you grow into the person you are today. You realized that every experience, whether joyful or heartbreaking, had shaped your character. Without those moments, you wouldn't have learned the value of honest communication, patience, and emotional maturity. Listen carefully. This changes everything. One afternoon, the woman's words returned to your mind: the truth doesn't always arrive to bring people back together. Sometimes it arrives to help them move forward without bitterness. Those words settled deeply in your heart. You understood that closure isn't about changing yesterday. It's about refusing to let yesterday steal tomorrow. As time passed, something remarkable happened. You stopped looking for signs from the past and started noticing opportunities in the present. You smiled more. You laughed without pretending. You became more open with the people who truly cared about you. The walls you had built around your heart slowly came down, replaced by wisdom instead of fear. You no longer felt defined by one chapter of your life because you knew your story was still being written. Stay till the end because something huge is waiting for you. One evening, as you watched the sunset, you quietly whispered, "I don't need the past to change for my future to become beautiful." In that moment, you felt a freedom you hadn't experienced in years. The memories remained, but they no longer controlled your emotions. They became reminders of how much you had grown rather than reasons to stay stuck. My beloved child, this fictional story reminds us that every ending carries a lesson. Some endings teach us strength. Others teach us forgiveness. The most meaningful ones teach us that healing begins the moment we stop waiting for someone else to give us permission to move forward. Real peace comes from accepting the past, learning from it, and choosing to embrace the future with an open heart. Listen carefully. This changes everything. As this chapter comes to a close, you realize that the woman didn't simply reveal hidden truths about your ex. She unknowingly helped reveal something even more important. You had become stronger, wiser, and more compassionate than you ever imagined. And that discovery would become the greatest turning point of all. But, my beloved child, one final chapter still remains. In the last part of this fictional story, every lesson will come together in a beautiful ending that reminds you why some chapters must close so that even greater ones can begin. And when that final chapter arrives, what happened next changes everything. My beloved child, don't skip this part. Listen carefully, because this fictional story is now entering its final turning point before the ending. Stay till the end because something huge is waiting for you. Days after your conversation with the woman, something unexpected happened. It wasn't a dramatic phone call or a surprise reunion. It was something much quieter, and much more powerful. You woke up one morning and realized that the pain no longer greeted you before the sunrise. The memories were still there, but they no longer carried the same weight. Instead of asking why everything happened, you found yourself grateful for everything it had taught you. What happened next changed everything. As you continued moving forward, people around you noticed the difference. Your smile became more genuine. Your confidence returned little by little. You stopped trying to prove your worth to people who had already made up their minds and started investing your energy in those who appreciated your honesty, kindness, and heart. Without realizing it, you had become the person you once hoped the relationship would help you become, but you achieved it through your own growth. Listen carefully. This changes everything. One afternoon, you unexpectedly crossed paths with someone who knew both you and your ex. After a brief conversation, they quietly smiled and said, "Time changes people." Sometimes the greatest victory isn't getting another chance with someone. It's becoming someone you're proud to be, no matter what happened. Those words stayed with you for the rest of the day because they perfectly described the journey you had been on. The woman who had shared the truth reached out one final time. She didn't have more secrets or hidden stories. She simply wanted to know how you were doing. When you thanked her for her honesty, she smiled and replied, "I was afraid the truth would hurt you. I never imagined it would help set you free." In that moment, you both understood that honesty, when shared with compassion, can become the first step toward genuine healing. Stay till the end because something beautiful is waiting for you. That evening, as you reflected on everything that had happened, you realized you no longer wished to rewrite the past. Every joyful memory, every misunderstanding, every goodbye, and every lesson had shaped the wiser, calmer, and stronger person you had become. For the first time, you weren't looking behind you with regret, you were looking ahead with hope. My beloved child, this fictional story reminds us that the truth is most valuable when it helps us grow, not when it fuels resentment. Healing doesn't require forgetting the past. It requires learning from it, forgiving where possible, and giving yourself permission to embrace the future without carrying yesterday's burdens. Listen carefully. This changes everything. As you walked into a brand new chapter of your life, you realized that the greatest victory wasn't discovering someone else's truth. It was discovering your own strength. The person who once searched for answers had become the person who now carried wisdom. And with every step forward, you were creating a future that no longer depended on the ending of one relationship, but on the beginning of a healthier, happier, and more hopeful life. But, my beloved child, one final chapter still remains. In the last part of this fictional story, every loose end will come together, bringing a peaceful ending filled with closure, gratitude, and the reminder that the best chapters of your life are still waiting to be written. My beloved child, don't skip this final chapter. Listen carefully, because this fictional story has been leading to this moment from the very beginning. Stay till the end because every lesson is about to come together. As the weeks turned into months, you no longer found yourself searching for explanations about the past. The conversation with the woman had given you something far greater than secrets, it had given you clarity. You finally understood that not every relationship ends because love was absent. Sometimes it ends because timing, fear, misunderstandings, and silence become stronger than honest communication. Accepting that truth brought a peace you had been searching for all along. What happened next changed everything. One afternoon, while walking through a place that once reminded you of painful memories, you noticed something unexpected. Instead of feeling sadness, you smiled. You realized those memories no longer had the power to hold you back. They had become reminders of how much you had grown. The person who once questioned their worth had become someone who recognized that real value comes from character, kindness, and self-respect, not from whether a relationship lasts forever. Listen carefully. This changes everything. In this fictional story, your ex also continued growing in their own way. Life taught lessons that neither of you could have learned while holding on to the past. Whether your paths ever crossed again or remained separate was no longer the most important part of the story. The greatest victory was that both of you had become wiser, more compassionate people because of everything you had experienced. Sometimes the happiest ending isn't about returning to an old chapter, it's about carrying its lessons into a brighter future. The woman who finally spoke the truth smiled one last time before saying goodbye. She quietly said, "I hoped the truth would bring peace, and now I can see that it has." You thanked her, not because she changed your past, but because she helped you stop letting the past control your future. That simple conversation became the beginning of a completely new chapter. Stay till the end because something beautiful is waiting for you. As the seasons changed, so did your life. New friendships appeared. New opportunities arrived. New dreams slowly replaced old disappointments. You laughed more freely, trusted more wisely, and loved yourself more deeply than ever before. Without realizing it, you had become the very person you spent so long searching for, someone who could face life with confidence, compassion, and hope. My beloved child, this fictional story reminds us that closure is not a destination someone else gives us. It is a choice we make when we accept the past, learn from it, forgive what we can, and refuse to let yesterday steal the joy of tomorrow. Every ending carries the seed of a new beginning for those willing to keep moving forward. Listen carefully. This changes everything. As you looked toward the horizon one final time, your heart felt lighter than it had in years. The questions that once kept you awake had been replaced by quiet confidence. You no longer needed every answer because you had found something even more valuable, peace within yourself. And with that peace came the courage to welcome every new chapter life still had waiting for you. And so this fictional story ends not with heartbreak, but with healing. Not with regret, but with gratitude. Not with looking back, but with moving forward. The truth fulfilled its purpose, forgiveness opened the door to peace, and your greatest chapter was never the one you lost. It was always the one you were about to begin.